The Northern Hemisphere, a portion of the Earth filled with tundra, ocean, and continents. Here, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, people live on a handful of small, volcanic islands called the Azores Archipelago. Most, born of their hardy and independent ancestors who have inhabited the islands since the 1500s. Some, though, have chosen this life, looking for a more peaceful existence. This is a look into one of their lives on São Miguel.
The name of my exhibition this year in Vila Franca's Cultural Center is Transformação, transformation in English. Basically, my concept is turning trash into treasure, transforming things that somebody would throw away who uses that broken necklace, that dress has a stain or a rip. One of my passions is making sustainable art. My granddaughter is in charge of taking the trash out, and I noticed just by sorting things that there was a lot of stuff that didn't really need to be thrown away. I realized how much I had that was these trash into treasures. So here in São Miguel, especially Vila Franca where I live, they bring all the school children by to see the exhibits. And last year I did a watercolor and jewelry exhibit, and the kids were phenomenal. I mean, from the preschoolers on up. So one of the things that I wanted to do is to show what you can do with scraps, especially for the kids. This year I wanted to really show them, look, this is old ribbon, but look what you can do with it. These are paper scraps, fence reeds that I took apart and used. So the kids can get exposure, and I mean the adults too, but learn to look at things through maybe a different set of eyes. There is almost always a second life for what I call ingredients, components that I use. So I have been collecting broken jewelry from garage sales, scraps from formal wear that I've made, costumes, old necklaces, old fabrics from anywhere I get them. My friends know that I do this, and I will get a package that has a broken plate in for me to use. So I wanted to give things a second life and kind of raise the understanding that garbage isn't necessarily garbage. Trash can be treasure. So that was what was behind this. And once I started, it started off with 2 pieces. And by the time I was finished, there's 21 here, and I'm working on 22. Both my dad and my grandfather was an incredible woodworker, and my dad could draw. So ever since I was a little kid, my grandfather was always drawing with me at the dining room table. And then when I hit high school, teachers were recognizing I was doing pencil work, charcoal work, and that gradually led into painting. So when I was in high school, I was fortunate enough to be in a school that has a lot of different mediums that you can take classes in. So I got into an independent art study where I could plan what I wanted to learn and freedom to choose to do what I wanted to do. I just would have to give an outline of what I had in my head and then see if I could accomplish it. When I was a junior and senior in Milwaukee, and it was just a short train trip down to Chicago. So the art teacher would take all the independent art students and go to the Art Institute. So I spent days wandering that museum and just absorbing everything. So that was the real impetus for me. I'm a lower middle class upbringing, not professional people. And, my mother wouldn't have taken me to an art gallery. So seeing all of that and being exposed to that, it lit a fire inside. I had the opportunity in high school to go to Italy to study, and my parents were not for that idea, let's say. Now I'm a lot closer I'm in the Azores, a lot closer to Milan than Tucson, Arizona, or Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So we'll get there. Vila Franca is my home now, and it just feels important to me to share here first. If pieces go elsewhere, that's wonderful. But this is my home, and I want my art to elevate or feed or, I don't know, some artistic vitamins into my community. And again, it's the kids coming through that just thrill me to death. So I've got 21 pieces that I'm showing here. And again, everything's been transformed. But they're all very different, which is really typical for me. I'm a watercolorist, and one piece will be photorealism and the other one will be like, did you just splatter paint on that? So my standard answer for everybody who comes in and looks around at all these pieces, like how many artists are showing, is there's one piece for each one of my personalities. Putting an exhibit here, to have the opportunity to have a whole gallery for an entire festival month it's beyond what I would have ever hoped for back in the States. So it's my heart is here in Vila Franca. So is my art.
I met Pam last year at the jewelry exhibition as she held it here at the Cultural Center. I was immediately captivated by her work, and when we started talking, she told us her story and how she ended up here in San Miguel. As she herself says, she is a transplant from the US to the Azores. And I immediately identified with her because I was also an immigrant to the US. And I, in fact, an American citizen, and I know exactly what it is like to live between two cultures. Pam is a special person. She expresses her creativity and her emotions through art. And she gives us unique perspectives and details of her work. In this exhibition, Transformation, she was very creative, I think. We can see the beauty and the inspiration in her work. I think these pieces, everyone, reflect her inner world, her feelings, and the experience in a very powerful way. They also bring a unique perspective of her work and offering different insights and interpretations. And this is very interesting. Her passion for art is contagious and very inspiring. We can see that. Pam, what can I say more, is such a positive and cheerful person. And I am very happy to have her as an artist friend. And I hope to keep working with her in more and more exhibitions.
The piece for me that really got me going and thinking about the next piece, and the next piece is this piece behind me called Praia, which is beach in Portuguese. I just love, moving from the desert to an island in the middle of the Atlantic is a huge change. And I am fascinated with the colors of the ocean and the sky and the black sand beaches here and how that translates as the waves come in with the sun hitting. So that was the impetus behind this. And as I was going through all of my stash boxes, I was finding fabric from my daughter's high school costume and a ball gown that I had made for a drag queen, and some of the lace from another wedding gown that I helped create, yarn that I spun myself. I just wanted to make this big beach scene, and I had everything for it except for the gray that shows the black sand beach. I had nothing in I have everything else. I did not have that. But there's a little store in town here called Obratairos, pardon my pronunciation. And they were fantastic. I walked in there and explained what I wanted, and they let me literally climb through the shelves until we found the gray Tupioni silk. So that was a real victory, because to me, it tied me in. This little store here on the island is part of a piece that just really makes my heart happy. There's one piece called Speak Love. Bullying, like every other school, it's an issue here too. And my granddaughter is in 4th grade, and their art club between one of the schools here in Vila and one in Pamela Gregan came together to do a project on bullying, and it was a beautiful, beautiful exhibit with many children involved. I took fabric and created a heart, and then I put silk sari ribbon running over and bunches of sayings. Your smile is like starlight. Love each other. I mean, some of them are trite, but they're all positive messages added onto all those ribbon strips that cut through the heart, because the words come into your heart, and it does, whether they're good or bad, they slice through your heart. I wanted to have a piece that really showed that, to speak love to one another and realize how our words affect the people that are hearing them. Speaking love to one another, I think, is a beautiful goal to have reminders. That's how that piece came about. There's a piece called Portrait of a Young Girl, which my granddaughter is going to be 21 this year, and it's from a photograph that when she was 4 years old. And it's very odd because this is my first granddaughter, and my granddaughter here, Lucy, they look so much alike that everybody coming into the exhibit thinks that the picture is Lucy. Each piece is a 1-inch piece of fabric, and so it looks like a mosaic when it's done. I had never finished framing it or anything, and I found it in my box of stash that I was going through. So it would be neat to let it see the light of day. It's very different, and I can tell here that people are really drawn to it. I've been collecting old broken jewelry. I get packages from friends, and I have a friend here who's, a sister here, and she loves all things vintage. So she was actually the inspiration for me to put this piece together with all of this jewelry. Phases of the moon, from quarter moon into a full moon. But it was literally Bethany that inspired that, just her love of things that not a lot of people even pay attention to. She has this spirit. Yeah, Moonlights is because of Bethany. One other piece is called Brick. And it's literally, I cut rectangles out of all of these, they're called fairy frost fabrics. So I've got copper and turquoise and real pale mint, but I wanted that color palette of the copper and the turquoise. And it's literally just cutting out dozens of these rectangles. And then again, having Bethany come and help me, so each one is hand stitched onto the canvas. To me, it looked kind of like a wall, but also as we got more of the bricks sewn on, it was starting to resemble a door to me. We're in Europe, and some of the architecture and the sculpture and the period pieces that you see everywhere. So I wanted to create something in the middle of that unexpected. So I have a box full of copper scraps. I hammered a rectangle, and then I had a piece of just copper flashing. I polished it up a little bit. There's holes drilled into it and stuff, and I wanted that to just stay as it was. Paris in the Rain is one of the oldest pieces I actually created probably 15 years ago. My one granddaughter was just going crazy. We were watching this series about ballerinas in Paris, and there were aerial shots looking down at Paris from above. And it was this kind of cloudy day, kind of colors were all muted. So this fabric just reminded me of the cityscape, looking down on it, all the old, I think they're called arrondissements, the blocks and the buildings and everything. So if you look real close into that piece, you see it's like there's little city streets. It kind of has that old world Paris feel to me. Jellyfish is the one that everybody is coming into the gallery and gawking at. The jellyfish here, man-o-wars, Portuguese man-o-wars, you don't want to meet up with one, but man, they are gorgeous. So that's what inspired that. I found these bright pink old brooches in my collection, and created the jellyfish out of that. And then the tentacles and everything are a couple of necklaces that were taken apart. But that's the one that everybody is spending much time staring at. In February, which is carnival season here, we were cooking for some of the parade groups. And my daughter went out to deliver a batch of malasadish. And she saw this rolled up fencing, which is sugarcane reeds, and they're wired together. And they were in beautiful shape. And my daughter comes back into the hall and said, "Look what I found. Do you want this?" And yes, my answer was yes. So she took the whole bundle of the fencing, threw it in the back of the car, and we took it home. The sugarcane is so much a part of this island. It's everywhere, and it's used for so many things. So the one piece is Earth, Sea, and Sky. So I had silk organza ribbon that were all these different blues. And so I just did a real simple piece of those reeds coming up like fencing, because that's what they started as. And I wove the 3 colors of blue through them just to literally just represent that. This is the Azores with those colors and those reeds. So it really is the island to me. Using the same reeds, the other piece is called Egypt. I had taken a class in paper making quite a few years ago, and so I had handmade paper left. I had worked on another project and had some gold leaf left. And my daughter is an Egypt freak. And her and my granddaughter, it's like Tutankhamun, the pyramids, the art. So it was that piece was inspired with some of the Egyptian art that we were looking at. The funerary pieces where the gold is still bright on it, but then on another piece it's kind of worn off and flaked off. So I used the paper that I made because it reminded me of the papyrus and the gold, and then putting some of those reeds in just spoke Egypt to me. Another one that I actually had in my own stash, created already, it's called Stone Flow. Many years ago, I bought a beautiful ametrine stone, emerald cut, and it's half turquoise and half this beautiful orangey copper color. So this piece is totally inspired by this one little stone I got. So I sent the picture of the stone to one of my friends who hand dyes fabrics, another one who hand dyes all the wool roving, which is the wool from a sheep that's been cleaned before it's spun into yarn. I said, hey, I want to make a piece. I don't know what I want to make, but do something, what you do with these colors. Let's see what I can come up with. And so it became Stone Flow with to me, the colors, the coppery brown is Arizona. It's the ground and the mountains and the desert, and then the blue of the sky. But the thing I like about the piece is it's been hung with the blue on the top and the brown on the bottom, and it's been flipped, and because it was loaned out to another place, another gallery, and they showed it the other way. And then I loaned it to a friend for their house, and she hung it vertically. So whatever you like with that piece. It's a stacked canvas to give some dimension, and the yarn pops out. But on the blank canvas behind it, I took raw stone or rough tumbled that is mined in Arizona. So there's blues, and I added some ambers and stuff. So this beautiful raw amber discs and stuff on there. But the fun thing I think about the piece is different people see it completely different. No, that's water. That's water. Well, then it's water to you. So, but that's the fun part, is creating it yourself and having your vision, but then seeing what other people think or what comes out of their heads and their hearts when they look at a piece. Nothing better than that. One of our favorite pieces, and this one is not for sale because it's a family heirloom, is a piece called Dancing Through Time. I was given this dress it's a flapper era dress, like 1924 or 26, in an old shoebox. by my ex-husband, and it was his grandmother's dress, and it had been stored in a trunk in the attic, and then after she passed and things got handed to him, and he thought, well, maybe you can do something with this. So I took it with us to the Azores and then took it out of the box, and oh my goodness, being in an attic in the heat, it was pretty disintegrated, destroyed. And it was like, no, this can't be the end of this. It just can't be. So I laid it out on a sheet and just really started looking little area by little area. What could be salvaged? What was still good about it? Could I create something else out of this dress? But as I was looking at it, there were no sleeves left. So there was a panel of lace on the back that wouldn't be seen. So I cut that out and fashioned new sleeves for it. Every little thing is stitched down because the fabric was so fragile that any weight, if it had weight on it, I was worried that it would break the threads of the cloth itself. So it took a couple of weeks to rearrange the folds in the skirt so that I was hiding where it was ripped. But what happened, kind of like Bob Ross, happy little accidents on your canvas. As I was piecing it together, the skirt kind of ended up taking this little up to the side, kind of like, it just looked like it was dancing again. And that's what I want to do with this, have this dress dance one more time in remembrance of Grandma B. So I just went with the flow, so the skirt kind of kicks up to one side, and the embellishment on her shoulder, I kind of opened that up as if she was moving, and then added an old string of glass pearls and knotted it because they would swing their pearls when they were dancing. I'm thrilled to death at how it turned out, and my ex-husband will be visiting in August, and oh my goodness, he is going to weep when he sees this. One of the two pieces that started this whole thing is a piece called Geometry. A friend of mine from the States, Bill, was an interior designer, and he retired. And so he gave me some of his sample books, thinking, well, he knew me, and what are you going to do with these? Almost a challenge. So I have wallpaper and upholstery sample books. So I've spent 3 years now, off and on, tearing these samples out of these books and painfully, carefully ripping the extra paper off the back, trying to think of, what am I going to do with this? Create a mosaic. I didn't know it was upholstery stuff and wallpaper. So I got that box out when I started thinking about doing this show, and it was perfect. There were so many that were all these neutral tones and golds and taupe. I just arranged them all on the canvas, willy-nilly actually, and then ornamented it with some vintage brass buttons I had and mother of pearl buttons, just kind of sprinkled across to give it some light. And then I had a couple of the tatted doilies that were in the same color family. So I soaked those in glue and sewed those onto the canvas. And not sure of what it was going to be at the end, but I love it. I love it that this is just stuff that was going in the garbage, for definite, sure. This really cool, very subdued piece came out of the gift of those sample books. One of the pieces here I called Waterhouse Women because I love the paintings of John William Waterhouse. He has painted just some phenomenal women's portraits and this very genteel, almost Renaissance feel of etherealness. I've always been a fan, and that's always the first place I head to, any place that is hanging any of his work. So I had picked up some bed sheets from a rummage sale, and so these beautiful bed sheets, and they're peach and real muted, and they were so soft because they had been obviously used for years. So I got the sheets and thought I'm going to make me a quilt top out of them. So I cut them all into strips and made all of this quilt top, and then I had printed off on fabric a couple of Waterhouse's paintings, and I was going to insert them in the quilt. And so I did that, and I got the whole quilt top done. And then it got folded up and put in a jar, another unidentified sewing object. And so while I was rummaging through my stash, I found that quilt top. It was like, I cut it up. I cut the middle out and then took one of the photographs. It's Gather Ye Rosebuds While Ye May is the name of the painting. So I quilted that into the bed sheet, quilted onto the canvas, and then just used some really pale roses and olives and plant greens that pick up some of the feel of his painting. So it's this odd little piece with the painting stuck in the middle of it, made into another piece of art, which I think is cool. Art, to connect art through the ages, is just a really fun thing to do. Credit where credit is due. The piece that I think is the most whimsical, the most unexpected, is a piece called Water Agua. I had a bag of plaster tucked in my goodies and some copper mesh that's actually used to, you can put it in your garden so like molds and stuff can't get through into your garden. It's very pliable, and I'm a copper freak. So I stashed it. And my father passed away. After he'd been gone for a few years, my mom asked me to go ahead and clean out his workshop, which I gladly did, because I found in the middle of all of this stuff, all kinds of copper pipe fittings, refrigerator coil. I took a box and threw all the copper from his stuff in there because that was coming home with me. It just made me remember my dad, and he was very good at many things, but not plumbing. So that was kind of the giggle to me, is to do that. He's looking down going, thanks a lot, love. So I just took one of the elbows, it's mounted on a wine bottle cork, through the canvas, and there's a pool noodle piece behind it, so that when it's on the wall, it doesn't pull the plumbing fitting out like this. I just took the plaster and put it on the canvas like it was flowing. It's like a rock that it's going over. And then the wire mesh comes from the faucet, the pipe, and just flows down. So this is kind of crazy little thing, and it makes me smile every time I look at it. It makes me remember my dad. One of the things that I've done since I got here, I take my camera out during good weather and take shots of whatever it is I might want to paint during the rainy season. One day's driving, I was out with another island sister. Kathy took me up to Sitsadaj. I had not ever been up there. I got all these beautiful photographs of the forest. And everywhere here in the island, there's always a path that you can follow. You find little waterfalls just coming out of nowhere, these little hidden gems. And you can go and go and go, and if you're looking this way, but that's over there and you miss it, and then the next time you go, wow. So that's what that painting, or that piece is. It was my wow. So Azorian Forest is born out of some of those hidden places that I've had friends show me. I moved here from the desert, from Tucson, and there's a lot of brown and there are greens, but my daughter tells me my first sentence after we landed and we were being driven to our home here on the island was me looking out with my eyes like saucers. There are so many greens, I have to buy more paint. That's this island. It's so deliciously green. So when you look at the piece, you can come out of the forest along the path, cross the log, and go onto the rocks and be up behind the waterfall. Some little glimpse of the gloriousness of living on this island and making a couple hops, skips, and jumps, and you're in this beautiful waterfall. when you prepare the gallery space, you bring all your works in and you start leaning them up against the walls. What goes next to this? What kind of flow do you want? And I have one piece called Autumn Forge that I love. It's beautiful hand-dyed scrap of stuff, and I work copper. I like to pound metal and work with fire. So this piece has some copper leaves that I created. So it's a beautiful autumn piece, except it didn't look good next to anything that I had ready to exhibit. The greens were too olive, and the oranges, there was nothing else here like that. Yeah, we took 3 days moving that piece around trying to find a place. And what I ended up doing is creating another piece with those colors so that it wouldn't be the lonely stepchild in the corner of the wall. And I went home and was putting stuff away, and I saw those ribbons, those spools. There we go. Just this, chaos. I think it was just cut and go. There wasn't all of this thinking like there are behind some of the other pieces. And so I chopped a bunch of the ribbon, and what I like about it is all the seams, because this is waste from when they do sari silk. And so this is sourced from women's co-op in India. But it was just cut them, and I hung them, I stapled them, didn't plan it, and then got it flipped and then kind of combed it out. So I wasn't even seeing the front of it. It was just pull it over and staple it, pull it over and staple it. But I just wanted the color to go how sunsets go. But I liked some of the white coming through. I don't know why. I didn't know if anybody would even like it. They're just like, oh, what the heck. In here, I didn't have this picture. I just had those colors. And it's so, I was pleasantly surprised. When I flipped it over, I literally sat, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes going, that looks cool. You know, the little tabs from where the seams are together, it all adds dimension and all of that. I don't know where that came from, but I'm mighty glad it did. You know, and it let the lonely stepchild come in. Have some place to hang. I was just asked, what's next? I actually have a couple pieces that I've started already because I didn't use a lot of things that I had for this time around. So I think I'm going to work towards doing a textile show, different textiles. I brought over a big collection of fabric. Yes. And I have some more unfinished pieces that as I was doing this, I was getting ideas for them. So I think that's going to be the next big thing. I want to do the hot dog stand here, which is a real institution in Vila Franca. And of course, some of the churches and cathedrals. There are places here in town where you see these homes that were built 1600s, 1700s. Looking at that, you see all the way back to the original stone wall. You know, you go past a building that's run down or it's abandoned. It's been a ruin for, 200 years. So to me, when I find those places, they just literally speak to me. Painting them, it brings them back to life. It makes people see that, wow, I never noticed that, or that was my grandma's house. The redheaded lady who paints, that's how I'm known. Oh, I know her. She's a redheaded lady who paints. But summertime here in Vila Franca is when I paint. And so I bring my easel and go set up by the beach. That's going to be my summer. Winter, we'll be working with fabrics. this is really weird to think about what is the stuff where'd that come from? And it isn't until you really, wow, wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Stop.